I am an American board certified sexologist, and I have a master's in public health from Columbia University, where I specialize specifically in sexuality, sexual and reproductive health.
Oh, wow. Okay. So I'm curious, because I've been hearing different things. What do you classify or define as sexuality? Is it just intercourse? Is it more broad than that? What is our sexuality?
Sexuality is everything. I mean, I, like many other sexuality educators, take a very holistic view of sexuality into education and into our practice and professional careers. Sexuality is everything from basic communication skills to consent in everything down to let's take a picture together, or can I borrow your pen, stuff like that. It also, does go to range all the way to intercourse, but there's so much in between that. Everything hand holding, there's elements of, personal health, hygiene, wellness, which can be spiritual, it can be relational, mental health. It really encompasses everything, which I think a lot of people have the misconception that, sexuality educators or professionals like myself, like we really are just teaching the birds and the bees, or, just, or not just, but, teaching anatomy and basically like what is sex. But there's so much more to it than that.
That's what I've, heard more and more, but I think that in general, as a society, like we've talked about, we kind of just see our sexuality as just being intercourse. And you named a lot of things that I think even I was like, oh, really? It's even sharing a pencil or writing a note. How is all of that sexuality?
Sure. So, I mean, in terms of the pencil thing, that's one that I talk about a lot to put things into perspective when people ask, like, what age should we start teaching about sexuality? I personally, my work is usually with like later adolescents and like college student 20 somethings, and then like some adults, but my audience tends to be mostly between like 18 and 30. Um, and people ask me, like, what age should people start learning about sexuality and these concepts? Or, you'll see in media or in politics, like, oh my gosh, these people are trying to teach my 5-year-old about sex. And there's more to sexuality, like I said, than just sex. And being able to ask someone for something and being able to say no or being able to say yes, all of those things are connected to sexuality, but they're also basic human skills that we need. So a lot of what is being taught to younger people is things like communication, healthy relationships. And, relationships aren't just romantic either. It's friendships, it's relationships with friends and family, you know, loved ones and strangers, how to interact with people they don't know. And asking someone for a pencil and knowing how to say no and being confident in saying no, and also being able to say yes. Those are two really big things that obviously apply later in life to things that are much, much more than just a pencil.
Absolutely. You're right. Like that is kind of the foundational work. These, what I like to call sometimes as like more soft skills, which are
Mhm.
really important. They're, communication skills, understanding someone's body language, understanding if it's appropriate to approach someone about something at this time or if it needs to wait until later. Those
Right.
are really important. And I think more than ever, I've really realized if you don't have soft skills, it's very hard for people to like you. And it doesn't matter in what context, you know what I mean? Like it could be in business, it could be in relationship, it could be in friendships. And one thing that members have said a few times, which I found to be very interesting, is that they've actually used their interaction with the models on LiveJasmin as almost a way to learn some of these skills that they were never taught. And because they have like a positive interaction with the model, they then feel more confident to go and ask a girl for her number at the bar. One guy told me like he could not ask out a woman. She would have to approach him in order for a connection to be made because he was so shy. And now that he's had these positive interactions repeatedly with, these models, he now feels confident enough to approach women and ask
Right.
them out or whatever the case is.
And I think something that people maybe don't realize or talk about a lot is that human interaction takes practice. We don't just enter this world knowing everything about how to relate to people, how to make friends, how to date, how to walk up to someone at a bar or wherever. And being able to practice those skills in a no pressure environment, like in education or with a professional like the models that you've spoken to, who are like very trained in these skills, are very like adept at communication and all of these things, having those positive experiences and reinforcements can really give someone confidence in their, not like real life, because it's all real life, but in their in-person or offline life.
Absolutely. Yeah. This actually, the same member I'm referring to now, he also said that, after I think 6 months of using LiveJasmin, his boss started commenting that he noticed more confidence in him and he was being a little bit more proactive at work. And I find it so fascinating how far reaching these interactions can be for our lives. But I really like what you said that like learning these soft skills, which are imperative, it takes practice. Like it's not something that unless, and even then you would have had the practice, but unless you were like really trained by your parents or something to really be social and to learn these skills, it is something that is really developed over time.
It's easy to forget that the more communication skills you have, the better. It's kind of a related sideline tangent. I think that especially in the time of pandemic, I have my public health background, so I'm putting on the public health hat, and sexuality educator hat. But technology allowed us to have deeper connection in a time where people were lost and had very little connection, especially for people who don't have partners or don't live with their partner or don't live with family or friends, people living alone. I think we can all speak to the fact that we all felt isolation and uncertainty and really longed for connection, whether that was, physical in person or emotional, spiritual, all of this types of connection that we had. And then all of a sudden had to modify or adapt.
Do you, as a sex educator, face stigma just for being in a field where you're talking about sexuality?
I, I I say yes, but I would not liken it to the same stigma that models and like adult professionals and sex workers face. A lot of us have credentials that give us a privilege of, for lack of a better word, like respectability. I mean, that's not right. All work is work, but I think a lot of the experiences I've personally had are in my interpersonal experiences. And the thing that surprised me most about my work was, or about being in my line of work, was the consequences that it would have on my dating life. Believe it or not, people get really weird about someone working and educating on sexuality, which I really did not expect, because to me, it's just so like logical to teach about something like this, and it's health. It's the same as teaching biology or chemistry to me. But people get pretty weird about it. And
in what way? What is it that's so off-putting? I'm also shocked by that. I'm surprised to hear that. If anything, I would think maybe it would be helpful. Like, yeah, I teach about this. Maybe you know a lot about it. You know what I mean?
there's kind of like two ways in which it goes awry. One of them is they're not comfortable with my public presence and willingness and voice talking about things that are taboo and stigmatized.
Mm-hmm.
So, I had, there was one instance I remember I was going to go on a date with someone from an app, and they texted me and said like, hey, like before we were going to go out, and they were like, hey, like, I just want you to know that like, I really respect you, but I'm just not comfortable dating someone who has like, I found your Instagram online and like I'm just not comfortable with that because of XYZ, whether that's like personal values or politics or religion or whatever. The other way that it goes awry is that it ends up with me being incredibly hypersexualized. And so the thing I'll get a lot is like, oh, can you teach me something? And it's just like, ick. Um, let's revisit those soft skills and communication skills about how to relate to people. I definitely can teach you a thing or two. It might not be what you're looking for. But yeah, those are kind of the two ways that things get weird with dating. Um, and of course, there are some implications professionally of having to make choices of, people express concern about me talking about vibrators on the internet and whether or not certain companies would want to hire me because I talk about vibrators, or vice versa. Like if I'm talking about something online for, I think a lot of people face that with any sort of public work. I mean, politics, or like people putting their politics online on their social media, just, and then potential employers finding it and not agreeing. They might not say that's why they're going to pass over you for an opportunity, but it has definitely been a line that I'm still learning how to toe in terms of appropriate to being different for different people.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah.
With anything, we go to professionals pretty much. I don't try and fix my plumbing. I go to the professionals and get a plumber, or when I have a medical problem, I go to a doctor. I don't think it's really any different. There are people who have lived experience who specialize in this type of work and type of communication. And why not, if you have the resources, benefit from that. And I think what makes people so uncomfortable is that camming and this type of industry is flipping the script of, it's no longer not, I can't speak universally on this obviously, but it's for the people who are participating consensually and enthusiastically, like they're flipping the script on what our society has said, which is, our society constantly marginalizes or objectifies women or sex workers or people who do camming or what have you. But the second that same community of people flips the script and now is benefiting and benefiting from that same structure that has been built to stigmatize them, they're like, wait a minute, that's not what we planned. And I think that that's what makes people uncomfortable. But yeah, I mean, they're professionals. It feels so obvious to me, but I know that that's not obvious to everyone.
Yeah. What is it that you think that they're professionals at doing
I mean, obviously,
beyond the
yeah,
sexuality?
I mean, they're basing their work in human connection. They know how to communicate. They know how to build intimacy, like building relationships and, creating trust and intimacy between people. That's huge. Like so many people struggle with that. People spend years in therapy trying to develop those same skills. And if like that person, that you had mentioned earlier, who like was benefiting at work and in their life, like, are you kidding me? That's huge. Like they're getting the same benefits as a lot of other resources like therapy or counseling and, or like some sort of like communication coach. it's these professionals are professionals. They know how to do what they do.
100%. Yeah. The Kinsey, and it's interesting because the Kinsey Institute has done a few studies on LiveJasmin now. The most surprising part of their research they found is that the models who make the most money, they had the least explicit calls, and they talked very little about anything sexual. And so their calls were longer, but they were literally talking to the members about day-to-day life, anything. Like the members had developed this relationship with them, and these models are becoming millionaires from it, from just knowing how to connect and allow someone to feel like seen and understood and heard, and like they're not alone in their life. That is a skill that can make you some money, apparently.
Definitely. I mean, absolutely, as demonstrated. Um, yeah, I mean, it doesn't surprise me that that's who had saw the most like profit. Um, and I think that it's a shame that people aren't more comfortable reaching out for that type of connection when they have the resources, or to pay someone to help them with that type of communication, and building a relationship. Not all of us are social butterflies. Some of us have like um, differences in ability that make it difficult to relate to people, or talk about certain subjects, or that kind of thing. And I think that having a professional who can, who's setting aside that time to work with you, um, that's great.
How do we create a more sex positive society?
Oh, once again, you were right. This is another $1 billion question. Um, Sex positivity is like sexuality, in my opinion, is steeped in everything that we do. Um, because sex positivity isn't just about being positive about sex. It's being positive and or neutral about bodies, not even just nudity, but respecting people's autonomy, and rights. There are systems in place that are sex negative, intentionally, and changing those systems will hopefully ultimately allow people to be more sex positive in all aspects of their life. Practicing critical thinking of, where am I getting this message from, and how can I make this into a sex positive one for myself and the people around me? That's a great first step.
Yeah, really well said. I agree. Thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you. Great questions. And you're a great interviewer.
Oh, thank you.
Um, so great communication skills.